business clubs out there that essentially were things for guys to scratch each other's backs. So there was, insurance salesmen and car salesmen and other business types who would get together in these clubs and they'd see how they could help each other. And Mr. Jones was kind of disappointed with the fact that he'd get involved with these clubs that promoted community improvement, but essentially they were just all about helping each other out. So he wanted to kind of focus his organization that he was heading up at the time to lead in the community and help things out. So his quote was, "Any association that presumes to leadership in the community will have to offer something more than business reciprocity among the members." So during this time, he developed the Lions Club into a community service organization from 1917 to 1925, but they were kind of in search of a mission. All of the Lions Club that he started in the area did things to help the community, but they weren't focused on a specific mission. So in 1925, they had an international convention. They had a number of speakers come to this convention to kind of pitch their personal cause. And at this convention, Helen Keller gave what must have been an amazingly rousing speech. And I'd encourage you to go to Lions Club International website and read the whole speech. But she ended the speech with, "I appeal to you, Lions, who have your sight, your hearing, who are brave and strong and kind. Will you not constitute yourselves knights of the blind in this crusade against darkness?" I think. And apparently that plea got 5 standing ovations, and immediately the Lions Club became the Knights of the Blind and committed themselves to helping blind throughout the world. So the Lions Club International is kind of the umbrella organization that the Deep Creek Lake Lions Club belongs to. So we are a charter of the overall Lions Club International. And in 1972, our particular club was chartered. So what do we do? As we just learned, the Lions Club International overall are quote-unquote Knights of the Blind. There's a variety of different programs that the Lions Club International does to serve blind people and the local and worldwide communities. But specifically, each club can kind of craft their own programs that they want to use to connect with either visually impaired people worldwide or people locally or regionally to them. So one of our flagship programs is the Blind Skier program. This has been around for, Tommy, 30 years or so. It's a very, long-lasting program. We bring visually impaired students from typically Maryland School for the Blind. We bring them up for a couple days for 3 weeks in winter, obviously. And our club coordinates the entire visit. We pay for all the incidentals. We coordinate preparing breakfast for the students. We coordinate all of the volunteers that are required. Okay, there we go. We would coordinate all the volunteers that are required. Hopefully my mic isn't dying here. So we coordinate the volunteers and we prepare breakfast for the skiers every morning as they're up here. So you can see on this, I'll just talk really loud. So you can see here, we have some blind skiers, and this is kind of the typical arrangement where the skiers in the middle, and then there are 2 either adult or high school volunteers on either side with a bamboo pole, and that allows the visually impaired skier to go down the hill and without major threat of falling down. So this is really just an amazing program. You hear, a few years ago we heard from a counselor at the Maryland School for the Blind. One of the students who had come up here had never really spoken, had never really been, had been very withdrawn.
And after just 3 days of coming up and doing this program with us, he was very much more outgoing. He was telling his teachers about how much he loved, skiing and what an amazing experience it was. So it's really amazing to think and experience the fact that this 3-day experience can really have a big impact on some of these students and again, they have very minimal chances to do this, especially with Maryland School for the Blind. These students are often, from economically disadvantaged areas. They often, in addition to blindness, have other developmental issues. So we really give them a chance to experience something that they would never have the chance to do otherwise. And here you can see 3 of our members that are preparing breakfast. A local condo owner has typically donated their condo for the use of this program every year. And we go over there every morning at the crack of dawn and prepare a hearty 3-pork style breakfast of bacon, sausage, and ham. So a little more recent program, but still something that we are really excited about is our Blind Camper program. We bring kids up. Sometimes that's been from Maryland School for the Blind, but we're also reaching out to other associations of that assist visually impaired children to bring up kids for a week-long camping experience at the lake. So we camp in tents at the Deep Creek Lake State Park. We go out and go tubing. So you can see here we've got kids who are on the Big Banana. We've got blind kids. And another great thing that we do is we involve the local Boy Scout troop with this activity. So they kind of take all care of all the camping stuff, and they set up the tents and do all the outdoorsy camping stuff, and are also good peer guides, and they can connect with a lot of these blind kids a lot better than us old guys can. So this has been a real great partnership where we've involved the Boy Scouts in this program, and we've been able to serve more kids and kind of get more kids out of their shell. Here on the right, we've got a Boy Scout leading one of the blind campers at Swallow Falls. And again, this is something that a typical blind kid would just not ever really be able to get to experience something like that. So this is our other big program that we support. We provide all the meals and activities. The WISP generously donates rides on the mountain coaster, so we take the kids down the mountain coaster. We go over to Funland typically and take the blind kids out on bumper cars and go-karts. So this is just a really amazing experience, not just for the blind kids, but just for the club members and the volunteers who help out. It's just a really great experience overall. Another thing that we do is we have an arrangement with the county. Over on Bumblebee Road, there's a county-owned park that I think is one of the most underutilized public resources in the county. If you know Bumblebee Road, there's that solid waste recycling site. There's the Heart Center for Animals. And right before both of those things, we have a really nice community park with a softball field, picnic pavilion, restrooms. And what we're currently developing, you can see down here, is a off-leash dog park. So this is all going to be fenced in with kind of the double gate airlock system so that you can take your dog off leash, run around, it'll be open to the public. But what we would like to do is get that park more access to that for the public. I think it's just something that people don't know about. And if we can build in some more amenities like this would be something that's very central to the whole county and everyone could use. More of what we do, so we had those 2 big flagship programs. We have that community park. Kind of drilling down a little bit more about what we do is we do vision screenings at local schools. So this is a process where we have a piece of equipment that Lions Club International has developed that volunteers can run and go through kindergarten classes and provide vision screening to kindergarten students to help catch any sort of vision problems that may occur later. So this is a great tool to kind of help identify problems that may happen later in life and get them while they're early, help address any educational issues that may happen because children aren't being able to focus correctly. So we do that. I think between all the Lions clubs in the county, we cover all the schools in the county with this special piece of equipment and the volunteers. We fund a scholarship at the college, and then kind of two scholarships at the college. Part of being an international umbrella organization is that part of the money that we raise goes towards bigger projects that benefit from the magnitude of scale. So we fund the Wilmer Eye Institute, which is down around Johns Hopkins, and is an internationally renowned vision healing center. Leader Dogs program, which helps train the blind leader dogs that the blind use to find their way around. We provide local assistance to county residents with eyeglasses, eye doctor appointments. We collect all the eyeglasses for distribution overseas as well. This is a picture down here at the bottom of a donation that we made to the state park for Braille signs for part of their trail system. So, we kind of keep this. We like the fact that our club just doesn't ship money off to Lions Club International, and while I'm sure all of that is money well spent, it's very satisfying that when we do fundraisers, we see the local impact of that, and it's a very rewarding system. So, on to how we raise money. So one of our big programs that we've just started up it's in our second year is the boat parade on the lake. We've been building that over the last few years. Essentially the system is we've been trying to get people to decorate their boats. We give them a number. They drive past a couple of judging stations from the McHenry Cove down to Dutchess, and spectators vote for their favorite boats with cash donations. So we're really hoping that it's been financially successful, and we're hoping to really build this into a big Deep Creek Lake tradition. We do casino nights, typically again over at Dutchess at Silver Tree. We do those usually 2 or 3 times in the winter. These are real money Vegas style casino nights. We do typically blackjack, a poker game, a money wheel, maybe some dice games depending if we have enough people and interest. All those people, I'm sure everyone went to Autumn Glory, so the enormous lines at all the vendors, we bring all of those people in, coordinate them, and make some money off of that as well. Some other ways that we raise money, hopefully a lot of you have seen the ad in the paper about our boat donations. So we get people to donate boats, and then in the spring we'll have a boat auction. We'll auction them off as is, but we'll clean them up, fix them up, and then we get the revenue from that. In the past, we've supported the Oakland Mountain Lake Club Park Redneck Days event, where we've had the Anything That Floats event. So we have kind of a water theme, if you can't tell, since we are the Deep Creek Lake Lions Club. And you can see here in the bottom the giant slingshot that we developed. This was out of Broadford Park. This was a big hit. We put a target out in the lake and had biodegradable water balloons, and you could buy $1 a shot and launch your balloons at the target. So it was a big hit. And this year we just had our first Bark in the Park 5K race. So the other benefit about that park out on Bumblebee Road is it joins something like 50 acres of county land that used to be the landfill, but is ripe for some good trails, and it's right next to the airport, so there's some undevelopable land there that we use to set up a 5K course, but is ripe for some other trails and other recreational activities out there. Okay, so we always need money, but right now we need members. We need people who can just commit and would like to be part of what we're building here. So it's not much, I promise. We meet the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. usually here. In the summer, they kick us out because they have a lot of people here. So we go over to our park on Bumblebee Road and meet there. There's usually some sort of program throughout the year. So like I said, we have the blind skiers in the winter, the blind campers in the summer. We have some other fundraisers, the boat parade, that kind of stuff. But you don't have to be in every single event. Only crazy people, probably like me, get involved with every single event. But by committing to be in the Lions Club, you can pick one or two that you just want, that are interesting to you, or you feel you have the time to commit to. And then the dues are minimal, $5 or $6 a month. That's it. At these meetings, we don't take attendance. There's no requirement to say, all right, you've only been here 35% of the time. If you decide to join and it's just not working out, that's fine. But if you would like to join, there's no pressure to keep coming and make it to a certain number of meetings. And yeah, I've got to say that we have a great time doing this stuff. This is, I consider everyone in the club my good friend. This is like, I look forward to the meetings. It's a good time to come back and see people that, sometimes I don't get to see for a while. And the events that we plan, and the blind skiers, the blind campers, it's just a great way to be connected in the community, get involved, and provide service at the same time. So, Doug, hopefully our membership chair, I don't know where Doug is he in the back or right there? Doug has been circulating some membership applications. They are right here on this table. If you're interested, we'll take them right now, and we'll sign you in next meeting. That'd be great. Like I said, we meet the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. If you want some more information, we've got some pamphlets here. You can go online. We've got a website. We've got Facebook. So find anyone if you've got more questions, find anyone with a name tag on, and we'd be happy to answer them. And we would love to have you. And let me say, this is just sometimes a life-changing experience to join this club. It's to see the impact of helping out right then and there is really amazing.
What time are your meetings?
So we 6:30 to 8. And our prior president, Ed, instituted an excellent bylaw into our club that the president has to buy everyone drinks if the meeting goes past 8 o'clock. So that ensures that the president runs a tight meeting that doesn't waste everyone's time. So it is 6:30 to 8, and I tell you, I 3 or 4 meetings in 5 or 6 years of doing this that have gone past 8 by a few minutes, and the president is like, keep talking, hurry up. So yeah, it's not just a bunch of old guys sitting around farting and talking to each other. It's a service that helps people out. What's that?
Women too?
And women. All right. Yes. Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. So there may be a misconception that there are certain clubs just for women or men. All are welcome in Lions. Every gender, every nationality, whatever you want to serve, you want to commit some time to help us out, we want you. That's all there is to it. There are no limitations, even age limitations. There are some junior clubs. It's called a Leo, and if there's enough interest at like a high school level, we'd be happy to do that too. But the bottom line is, you want to join, you want to help with this cause, come on out and we'll take you. So, Jerry, Jerry wanted to say a couple things about...
I think Chris covered just about everything. Fabulous job as usual. I was a past president also. And the reason that everyone in this room, I assume, is here tonight is to hear this man here, Ed King, speak. So I'm not going to speak very long, because Ed King's the guy that asked me to join the Lions Club. And when Ed calls, you show up. That's been my experience with the Lions, and it's a great bunch of guys. I drive a boat in the summer, I can cook a breakfast in the winter, but like Chris said, you show up when you can. And we have officer duties, but you know, we all take turns with that. So the first year I got signed up, I was president the next. 'Cause they were a little light anyway. What's next on the
Okay.
agenda?
So,
We'd love to have anyone who wants to help.
yeah, we'll love to have you. Find someone with a name tag. But Ed, if you're ready, I'll turn it over to you. And thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming out. I don't know if the pizza is that good or why you all came, but anyway, thank you so much for coming out. I want to say, first of all, I'm not a historian. Some of this stuff that I'm going to talk about today came from a real historian, the late John Grant, and also from Bob Bowe at the museum, encouraging me to do this talk. I love Deep Creek Lake very much, and I have written 14 or so vignettes for the Republican with the theme, I love Deep Creek Lake. And I've also written a book about famous boats on Deep Creek Lake. And I think my love for Deep Creek Lake started back, well, my parents told me this. The first time I came to Deep Creek was in 1933. Now don't get your calculators out. In a baby buggy. And we camped all around the lake. We camped over on Rock Lodge Road. We camped at the end of the Glendale Bridge where Fulker Smith later built a beautiful house. And from that day on, I've never had a bad day at Deep Creek. And I think I got that from my parents. My father and his cousin in 1923 walked from Uniontown, took them 3 days to get here, to get jobs to help build the dam. And they actually helped on the dam. And my parents, being a product of what Tom Brokaw calls the greatest generation, never ever perceived that they had enough money to buy property on Deep Creek Lake. And when my wife and I bought in 1965, they were the proudest parents in this world. So, me not being a historian, I'm going to substitute my love for Deep Creek Lake tonight in my presentation. So, bear with me. What do we do here today?
Sorry. Okay.
Am I on? Okay. The concept of Deep Creek Lake started around 20 years before 1923 when actual work began. There were 4 dams planned by the Pennsylvania Electric Company, and this was called the Youghiogheny Basin Project. One of the dams was to be at Crellin in New York. One of the dams was supposed to be above the waterfalls in Muddy Creek Falls. One was to be in Deep Creek, and it was the only one that was ever built. And one was to be at Gap Run, downstream in New York. The location of the power plants, there were to be 2 power plants. One that we know of at the bottom of Hoy's Run Road, and the other power plant was to be at Friendsville. Now the water from Crellin and the water from Muddy Creek would come through flumes and tunnels down to the power plant at Hoy's Run Road. The water from the Cap Run Dam would go to Friendsville, where there would be another power plant. Of course, and this is something very interesting. There's 900 feet of elevation drop between Crellin and Friendsville. And what they were planning to do is capture that water 2 times, really. And what was coming down Muddy Creek from Crellin would have been much more. What happened, the coming on of power plants like the one we have at Mount Storm made it not so economical to do the other 3 power plants, or the other 3 dams. With energy the way it is today, who knows, maybe they'll go back. The work actually began in 1923. Nearly 20 years of dreaming and speculation finally started to come together. Land had to be purchased, the dam had to be constructed, trees had to be cleared, and the tunnel had to be built. I'm going to give you a lot of statistics, so bear with me for that part of the talk, because statistics are kind of a little bit boring, but I'll try to get through these real quick. They had to buy about 8,000 acres of property. Only 4,500 of those acres would be actually what they call the project lands. And I'll talk a little bit about the remaining of those acres a little bit later. But the basic thing was, from the owners of that property, all or nothing. If you wanted to buy a 200-acre parcel and only 100 acres were in the water, underwater, that owner said, no, I'm not selling those 100 acres unless you take it all. So that's how they come up with the extra 4,500 acres. And I'll tell you a little bit later about how those were sold in the 1940s. Here come the statistics. The dam is an earthen dam. And it's tapered up like this, and it's 450 feet at the base. And it's up to 24 feet at the top. It's 1,300 feet long, and it's 86 feet tall. 750,000 yards of dirt were removed. Now the spillway is 300 feet wide, where the water would come up and go over the spillway, and it's 720 feet long. The top of the spillway is 2,462 feet. Now I'll tell you a little bit about hydrology and building a hydroelectric dam. The idea is not to waste a drop of water. So you run all of that water through the turbines. Now, if the rain coming down is more than the 2 turbines, and I'll get to the number of turbines in a minute, can take, then the dam might fill up and go over the spillway. And I'll show you a slide on that a bit later. When the lake is full, there's about 4,500 acres. This figure changes through the years, but these figures that I'm giving you now were the figures back in 1923. Some of the things you'll read now, that's 3,900 acres. But the lake is 11.6 miles long. There's 65 miles of shoreline, and it can hold 4.6 billion cubic feet of water. The power plant. This word head here is a term in hydraulics, meaning the difference in elevation between the top of the dam, the surface of the water, and the power plant. Now, I told you that the dam was only 80-some feet deep. But by drilling a tunnel through the mountain down into the Yaak River, they picked up the addition to make 440 feet of head. There are two 12,000 horsepower Alice-Chalmers turbines. The step-up transformers step up the voltage for transmission to 115,000 volts. At full load, they can generate 20 megawatts. And the tunnel is 7,000 feet long from the dam down into the Yaak. Deep Creek Lake is used as a peaking station. There's not enough water in the Deep Creek Lake watershed to run the turbines all the time. So a kilowatt of electricity is worth a different price at any time during the day, depending upon demand. So when the demand gets up and the price of a kilowatt of electricity is peaking, they turn Deep Creek Lake on. Like in the summer when high air conditioning loads, etc. Filling the lake. The tunnel was closed in March of 1925, and they expected it to take 6 to 8 months to fill. The lake was full on May 26, 1925, and the power plant went online. The dream came true. This 6 to 8 months is what a lake is called the turnover rate. Theoretically, any drop of water, at least in the main body of the lake, would flush through the lake in that less than 1 year time. And that is one of the reasons Deep Creek Lake is such a healthy lake. The turnover rate of Lake Tahoe is hundreds of years. And that's why the environmentalists are so concerned about Lake Tahoe, where Deep Creek Lake, the turnover rate is rather rapid. Some miscellaneous here. Thousands of trees were cut, the smaller branches were burned, the logs were hauled off. Many logs were not. They were not required to remove the logs back in 1923, or not all of them. And stumps are still coming up, floating around the lake in the springtime. It was over 1,000 men worked on the project. 12 miles of railroad were built, and 15 miles of roads were relocated. And the whole cost of the lake was around $9 million. You couldn't do anything for $9 million in this concept. Okay, that's about all of the statistics I'm going to try to feed you. So now I'm going to show you some pictures of what happened, and etc. This is the next few slides, thanks to Brookfield Energy for them. This is the diversion tunnel. This is the culvert over Gravelly Run Road. Oh, by the way, just a little footnote. My talk is going to be about an hour long, and we're going to go past 8 o'clock. I'm not buying drinks, but there's another piece of pizza back there. There's the tunnel shaft. That's the intake to the tunnel. This is the quarry. The quarry was close to the dam down on Mayun Road. And now you're going to find out that I like to tell stories. So my first story tonight is about the Brenneman well drilling operation. What in the world does that have to do with the quarry? Larry Brenneman, who's running Brenneman Well Drilling now, his father was John Brenneman, and John told me this story I'm about to tell you about his father. His father was about 18 years old, and he was the fireman on one of the steam drills at the quarry. Now, young Brenneman had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go all the way down to the dam, and fire this boiler up so that at 7 o'clock when work started, that boiler was ready to roll and drill holes that they would place dynamite in and at the quarry. Well, it seemed as though the operator of that drill was not real reliable. Must have had a little drinking problem, but some days he'd come to work late and some days he wouldn't come to work. So the foreman came over to Brenneman and he said, "Young man," he said, "can you run that machine?" And Brenneman stood up and he says, "Yes, sir." He says, "I've been watching every move and I know how to run it." He said, "Well, that man's fired, you're hired, get on it and run it." Well, they finished the dam. Brenneman went back to Hoy's. He thought, you know, if I could get that machine over here, I could drill a well for my farm, for my parents' farm. Well, he wrote a penny postcard up to Pennsylvania Electric asking if he could get that machine and bring it over and drill one hole. Penny postcard came back 2 weeks later and says, "The machine doesn't belong to us. It belongs to XYZ contracting." Another penny postcard up to the contractor that owned the machine. And they said, "Yeah, you can do it." So Brenneman, with a Model T Ford, ropes and pulleys and come-alongs and what have you, brought that machine all the way from down at the dam over to Hoy's, and they drilled a hole in the ground and they got water. Well, the man across the street said, "You think you could bring that thing across the street and drill another hole?" Another penny postcard. This time when the penny postcard came back, the answer was no. "But we'll sell you the machine." And thus is the beginning of our Brenneman Well Drilling. Just let me tell a story and give me a chance and I'll do it. Here's the Deep Creek Bridge back in '24. This is false work that they take out. It's not there anymore. Here's the power plant. And I'm going to tell you something about the power plant relating back to the story I told you about the 4 dams. This end of the power plant has all windows in it, and it was built such that if they did bring the Crellin Dam and the Muddy Creek Dam in, they could put a couple more or 3 more turbines and build the power plant out farther. Here's a Glendale Bridge.
And my grandfather worked at the power plant, built the power plant.
Good. Dave's sister back here, his grandfather worked at the power plant. Another picture of the Glendale Bridge. Check this car out. The new Glendale Bridge is still using this pier and the abutments. This is the Glendale Bridge just before it was raised to build the new bridge there. And I'll tell you another quick little story. For that car you saw on the previous picture here, it was a 2-lane bridge. However, with the pickup trucks that we're driving today and the big mirrors on either side and boat trailers with wide treads, it isn't any longer, it wasn't any longer at this time a two-lane bridge. It's one day, a family had left their boat at the state park, and the wife was bringing the trailer back to go back to her cottage, I guess. And she got out about halfway on the bridge. Now, the Garrett County way is that when you approached the bridge, you looked out across, and if there was a car on the bridge coming, you stopped and let the car go by. Now, on the weekends, we have people that aren't from Garrett County. And a wise hot shot from the other end met her at the center of the bridge. Well, the end of that story is there were cars backed up to 219. State troopers had to come, and some good Samaritan got in this lady's pickup truck and backed that trailer all the way back across, and they cleared it. It took 2 or 3 hours to do that. There's one of the turbines at the power plant. This is the control room. Many of you might know Harlan Bernard, the husband of the late Jan Bernard. These are the step-up transformers, stepping it up to 115,000 volts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the water permit. I'm just going to give you the facts. I'm not going to get into the discussion about the water permit much. The water permit is through the state of Maryland, and it permits an average of 94 million gallons of water per day to be drawn off the lake, with the maximum of any particular day of 420 million gallons. These are the stakeholders that have an interest in that water. The whitewater recreation downstream, that's the kayaking. The temperature enhancement to keep the temperature in the Yawk below 25 degrees Celsius. That's for our dear friends, the trout. A minimum flow in the river. Again, that's for our dear friends, the trout. And of course, the recreation on Deep Creek Lake. And probably the most important is what the power company built the dam for, and that's power generation. There's always a controversy of too much water, not enough water, a boat stuck in the mud, what have you. So, I think it was around 1984, the rule band was created. And you may not be able to see this, but this is 2461. And remember I told you the spillway is at 2462. We're not supposed to get any water over the spillway, so in the summertime, when we're doing most of our boating, 2461 is where we try to get the water up to. Right at the peak of the summer, there's only 1 foot variance there. And then here, starting in June and July, when we have less rain, the rule band curve permits draining the lake down some. But if you've ever been to the Occoganey Reservoir over in Pennsylvania, that is a Corps of Engineers dam, and it was built for navigation on the Ohio River, basically. It's a flood control dam, and it's also used to release water for the locks on the Ohio River and the Yawk. So, this is one of the most controversial things around Deep Creek Lake here. lake jurisdiction, it started out being under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission called FERC. Now it's under the state of Maryland. It was the Resource Administration, and now it's MDE, the Maryland Department of Environment. This was 1991, and I was fortunate enough to have our boat in the water and go down to the dam and take this photograph. The water has gone over the spillway only like 3 or 4 times in the history of the lake. Recall that I mentioned that some of the logs were floating around the lake. Well, in the spring, in the summertime, you had to be very careful running your boat or water skiing, what have you, because these logs were still floating around in 1950s and 60s. But this boat here was built in 1925 by the Kale Lumber Company in Oakland to rescue some of these logs, which were good saw logs. And with this boat, they would tow the logs up to McHenry, pull them out, let them lay in the field and dry out, and then later take them to the mill. This boat, by the way, is featured in my book, Famous Boats on Deep Creek Lake.
And my dad had a boat called the Dreamer that looked just like that boat. Do you know if that was the same boat?
No, it isn't. It's a different boat, and it's in my book also. That's about all I'm going to talk about the dam and the hydroelectric function of the lake. I'd like to talk more about people and people that have contributed to the history of Deep Creek Lake. And I say here camps to cottages to second homes. Back in the 30s, it was hard to tell whether it was a camp was a frame structure or a tent. The frame structures were not very much more than a tent. This picture here happens to be known by these lovely people over here, Dennis and Nancy. Was taken in 1930, and that was a camp. There were 4 couples came, and another little tidbit, Friday night in the winter time, when the people would arrive at their cottages, the first thing that they did, they'd work. A lot of them came from Westinghouse up in Pennsylvania, and many came from Kaiser and the mills around here. But the first thing they did in the wintertime was build a big fire in the fireplace. Immediately after that, they'd get the mattress off the bed and prop it up against the couch in front of the fireplace. Get that baby warmed up. Then they'd take their trip to the nearby spring and get their water and be unloading the car and put the mattress back on the bed, jump in under 2 or 3 down comforters. And by morning, if the fire was big enough, it might be up to 50 degrees. So that was the routine back in the 1930s. This was also part of the 1930s life. Every cottage had an outhouse. And I'm going to tell you more about that in just a minute. This is that same cottage. If you see this portion of it here with the window there, this door is where that window was, and between this and this is the same cottage. It's got heating and air conditioning and indoor plumbing. Thanks to Dennis and Nancy.
That house is gone.
I'll show you. I'll show you a change. We've come a long way, haven't we? These notes here are taken from a 1938 Deep Creek Association newsletter. Deep Creek Association was the forerunner of the Property Owners Association. Now I want to read you, I just took a few excerpts from that newsletter. The number of cottages were 139. The number of camps were 8. And that was a fuzzy number because they didn't know whether it was a tent or an old log cabin like that. The number of approved water supplies were 137. This is interesting. The number of sanitary privies were 81. And the number of unsanitary privies was 52. Now, what is an unsanitary and a sanitary? You know, I've seen privies sitting on locust posts, completely open around the bottom, with chickens on them back and forth. And I would imagine that that would be an unsanitary privy. However, some privies, like the picture that I showed you earlier, had pits and they were completely enclosed around in a bucket of lime sitting nearby. Number of flush toilets on the whole lake was only 52. Number of garbage disposals that were satisfactory was 193, and the garbage disposals that were unsatisfactory was 34. Now, I'm not talking about that button that you touch and you burn and you grind up your food scraps. I'm talking about probably a 55-gallon drum as an incinerator. And the unapproved ones were probably over the edge of the bank. I mean, it was very interesting. There were 2 drownings there. The roads, the same argument that goes on today. We need better consideration. 1/3 of our tax base was coming from the lake people. Well, now it's 65% of the tax base is coming from. Very few people had electric. There was stealing. There was some stealing, and I'll show you the reward notice here in the next slide. This is interesting. I showed you the rule band curve, and it fluctuates a couple of feet there in the summer. In 1938, 27 feet. There were places you could walk across